I'm your host, Scott Norton, and welcome to At Large. On this show, I talk to world-class creatives who use business to bring their ideas to life. We'll hear about their creative practices, their most interesting stories, and the lessons that will inspire you the way that they have inspired me.
My guest today is Danielle Baskin. Danielle has been called an artist, provocateur, businesswoman, and satirist, all at the same time. She's the creator of nearly 36 businesses, all rooted in creativity and social commentary about Silicon Valley. Learn how she's transformed an experimental social network into a successful startup and how she's gone viral again and again. We'll learn from her how to be more sensitive to great ideas, how she follows her creative compass, and what she's learned about the power of focusing on one thing at a time.
Danielle, thank you so much for having me in your space.
Oh yeah, it's great to be interviewed here. It's sort of like a museum of my companies.
Yeah,
I have lots of buried artifacts on like 2 floors that span a decade.
For those of you listening at home, there's different oscilloscopes and lots of beautiful looking indoor plants. Yeah. I really enjoyed spending time learning about your past and your projects and kind of researching your work.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to hear you share about it in your own words.
Yeah.
Something I found interesting that struck me is you said that you, quote unquote, grew up on the internet running virtual businesses
Yes.
in MMOs
Yeah.
and playing adventure games.
Yes.
So tell us about that. And, and for those of us who aren't, nerds like me, what is an MMO?
Massive multiplayer online game.
Yes.
Yes, that's the acronym. Yeah.
So
I played RuneScape.
Okay, so tell us about that and what kind of businesses were inside RuneScape.
Well, I guess the first business I ever had was in Neopets when I was in fifth grade, and it wasn't like a real business. I mean, it was just like using like the point system in Neopets. But on Neopets, this is really cool, which I wish kids could still do. But you could just edit the code on your shopfront in the game. They just let you edit the code. And so it was this like playground for kids learning HTML and like putting in like MIDI files and sparkly backgrounds. But the kids would like pay each other to design each other's sites. Not that we didn't know how to do it. It's just you want to like a guest artist to like come in and make your shop beach themed for the month. And so you pay. Yeah, you do collaborations. And so a friend and I would like do revamps on people's shop fronts. And this was like how I learned how to code. But from there, I then got into RuneScape, which was a much more interesting game for me. And that was in like, I think the year 2000.
And what is RuneScape?
RuneScape was like a free World of Warcraft. It was like a lesser version, but it's a game where you build a character, go on quests, like you can fight other players, but you would be leveling up. But in the game, I can tell you about my first business.
Please.
A lot of the items you would need, like let's say you're an archer, you would need to make bow and arrow, or you need to make arrows. You could like get your bow from the general store. You could get like nicer bows, but the arrows required either walking all the way back into town to like go to the general store. So I had this idea that I would go to the area where new players would spawn, where they're like level 1 and they need to kill animals to level up. And there's like a ton of chickens in this area that they just kill the chickens, but the feathers are useless to them because they don't even know about archery. So I'd pay them for their feathers while they're leveling up, which that wasn't really a thing you could do. No one offered people money to level up in the game. I'd be like, I'll pay you in gold and armor to just give me all your feathers and give me all your sticks.
Feather arbitrage.
But I would sell them for like a huge markup because like these players were like, top level. Like they had a ton of stuff from like quests and like from fighting other players. So I made a lot of in-game currency this way, but I had a client list. Like I had all the archers and I'd follow up with them on a weekly basis and be like, what's your stock looking like? I did this from like, I did this like late at night as an 11-year-old.
Wow.
Yeah.
As an 11-year-old.
Yeah.
Wow. And that's, so your first business was, and you were making in-game virtual currency.
Yeah, none of it was real.
Yeah.
I also had like a website, but I used like .tk domain. Like everything I did on the internet was free and involved no real money because I did not have a bank account.
Yes.
Nor would I like ask my parents for money for my games. So like, no, it was all free and I had gold in the game. And then, from there, I could like do more stuff in the game. And then, but I ran a business and then I had like other people helping with the business too. Like I had to like hire employees.
Within RuneScape?
Yeah, within RuneScape.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That's
yeah.
fantastic. So interesting to think about like how metaverse has evolved and also how virtual and digital currencies have evolved too. I mean, we've come full circle that now you can, as a young person, like build an online business with
totally.
crypto or these virtual
Yeah, I
currencies
wonder
and
if I
still
would
not
have
have
been
a bank
into-
account.
Right. I wonder if I would have been into crypto as a kid. I'm not sure. But RuneScape Gold is used as currency in like Venezuela or something.
I believe
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of alternate economies and game
Totally.
economies crossing over. So you did go to art school though.
Yeah, I went to art school. I think like I did a lot of art classes like when I was a teenager at Art Institute of Chicago, and our teachers were like grad students, and they really exposed me to all kinds of art. Like I learned a lot about video art and performance art.
Mm.
In a room of 16-year-olds, someone's project was just like they had long hair, and then they walked into the room like to present their work, and they just like chopped off all their hair and started crying. So I was like, wow, this was so powerful. Art can be anything.
Yes.
And so I did end up going to art school. I wanted to, at the time, like actually be an optical illusions researcher. I don't know. When you're 18, you have all these like random ideas for like things you want to do based on your interests.
Right.
And so
like that's a whole industry. Optical illusions
I was
research.
very interested in neuroscience and art. And I was like, I was like exploring optical illusions in my sculptures.
Did you go to Art Institute Chicago for college?
No,
or
I just did. They had actually, this is really cool. They did a lot of classes for teenagers throughout the year and during the summer. It was more about like how to explore concepts through art. So I'm very grateful I had that exposure.
That's wonderful. I feel like it's a theme where people start with their enthusiasms and their hobbies very early in life. I mean, you were editing Neopets websites at 11, running RuneScape business at 12, and then at 15, 16 at our Art Institute of Chicago, learning these ways to think about optical illusions and art concepts. And so you worked in immersive theater in New York.
Yeah.
And the theater company you worked with, Odyssey.
Odyssey Works. Yeah.
They are famous for making performance works for an audience of one.
So I got involved in Odyssey Works, which is a group that researches a single person, like just any person that applies, for 3 months. We interview them. They know it's all with consent.
Right.
They applied to have this done to them.
Yep.
We interview their friends, their family. We figure out like what sort of parties they're going to and send someone from our team to like, kind of observe them.
As a mole.
Yeah, exactly. And then we have them tell us a lot about what they find beautiful, what they're seeking. We try to make things that are genuinely what they would find beautiful and mirror their world back to them in a way that's transformational. And this, would involve the brains of like 100 people working on it, all for just one person. There was like a core set of designers, but then for some scenes, we would need like 20 dancers to show up all wearing green. And like, it was a full day. So every hour sort of curated by different artists, and it all flows together. And we'd map out their emotional arc. It was so cool.
So you'd research these subjects for 3 months.
Yeah.
And then the performance piece that they were the audience of one for was a single day?
It was a single day over 24 hours, but it would involve sleeping. We'd often take them somewhere to sleep. Like sometimes it was in their own home, but the whole arc of the day was orchestrated, like even the way in which they woke up. So like, for example, one of the participants woke up to an alarm that was playing a radio show, but it was like a radio show that we made, and it told them where to go next. And then a person met them there. And there was parts that like it was solo, like, just someone needed to walk with like a heavy object for a full hour to like get in sync with their body. There were also parts where like we would put someone in a cabin for like, a few hours to have them write stuff. So it's like each person was totally different. And it would take place throughout the day, and then they, would reflect on it and debrief, and we'd all meet up like a week later.
It's so fascinating because this is a medium that I feel like could never actually be commercially viable.
Yeah, so that's why they don't do it anymore. Well, now they teach workshops on how you could do this for others. So it's like spreading the idea of it. We wanted it to be open to anyone. So the applications were just like shared on Reddit and Metafilter and just get total strangers. I think it's tricky to monetize that sort of thing when it's like up to the artists to decide what it is.
No, it seems like an impossible model to monetize, which
That's cool.
Yeah.
But it is temporary.
Yeah. And it was none of our main jobs, like it was just this thing we were part of, which was really cool. It was like a collaborative group. But now they do workshops. So Odyssey Works like hosts like week-long workshops where you could like learn how to do experience design. And they also like encourage people doing sort of miniature versions of it. Like, what if you designed a beautiful experience for a friend for like 3 hours? What are all those details you'd put into it? And you could interview your friend's family and all that stuff. And so
what a great way to care for someone.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
That's lovely. And so now moving to your own practice and your work, how would you describe your craft?
That's a good question. I mean, I approach my craft with like deep curiosity. I think that's like what drives me in doing a lot of things. I am a designer. I'm interested in visual and, nice UX and like a good experience that achieves some, solves some problem. But I am actually very interested in like when you put something surprising out there, what is the unknown of like how people will interact with it. And I think that's what like motivates me to do stuff, is like when things have a life of their own.
So you're motivated by the curiosity of discovering how your work is going to be interacted with and accepted or kind of like interpreted.
If there's some like deep mystery of like, okay, I think people will interact with this. Like I have to be sure of that. I know people will interact with it. But what will it lead to is like a deep unknown. I'm very like interested in that.
And so your work over the last, call it 14 years, has transitioned, or it appears to have changed. Your early work in, call it like 2010, 2011, tended to be either very functional. For instance, you were on a city bike and you needed to use your phone as a navigational tool.
Yeah.
And so you created a case,
a compatible phone case
that would strap to the city bike, and you decided to sell it to others as well.
I did. Yeah, I got them manufactured. I made them all myself, and then I worked with my friend's cousin in Bangladesh, and we like made a whole run of them.
And so as functional as utilitarian, but it also wasn't just something for you, it was something to share with the world.
Yeah.
And you also were doing work at the time that was more ornamental. I mean, I'll call it, if you're offended by that phrase, ornamental, then I accept that. But the helmets.
Yeah, I did custom bicycle helmets.
What was that project called?
Inkwell helmets.
And so tell us about Inkwell.
That started from me not liking the bicycle helmet options out there. I started riding a bike in 2006, and bike fashion just was very like sporty, spandexy, just like not, stylish. And so I painted my own helmet, but I was like, oh, I don't want just one design. I want a few different helmets, like for, different personas, different aesthetics. And so I painted a few helmets for myself, but I always got stopped and asked, like, where'd you get that? So I just like kind of had to start a business because so many people wanted one. People were like, can I buy this from you? So I made a website for it, and you could like PayPal me and I would do custom design. But then I ended up with a huge portfolio of design. So beautiful. It turned into a larger company over time.
Yeah, I mean, it's both a company and also just an incredible archive of images. I mean, on the website now, they all
like 100. I think I did. I mean, I painted thousands of helmets. Like I did the same designs over and over again. So I became a very fast painter. It's not a good business to paint on helmets, though, because it takes a long time. And it's a helmet, so you can only charge so much. You can't double your prices if it takes twice as long for a helmet,
Right.
For painting, it's more difficult to paint on a helmet because the paint has to be durable and like scratch resistant.
Right.
There's so many steps. You're just painting on canvas. You don't have to worry about being dragged on the floor.
Yeah.
So I loved the concept. And I actually worked on techniques to sort of mini mass produce designs. So without painting it, like sort of melting graphics on it. And I made progress on it. And then I expanded into just doing custom helmets for companies, because I ended up manufacturing my own helmets. Like I went to China and found factories to work with and did safety testing and like made a helmet suitable for painting. But then from there was able to like do helmets for brands.
Oh, wow.
So I got like the domain name brandedhelmets.com, and I actually still get inquiries.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the long tail of the internet.
Yeah.
People find it and ask you. And still, I mean, that was relatively, I mean, you're designing helmets, you're painting them, you're selling them.
Yeah.
And then at some point, your more recent work is much more conceptual. So my question is,
Was there a project that you see as the tipping point for you or a turning point in going from the more functional and ornamental, like, oh, and I'll create this as a business because I have demand for it and because I'm good at it, to something that you put out into the world and you're like, holy smokes, like people are really paying attention to this thing. It's got a life of its own and it has some layer of meaning, some commentary.
Yeah, I think I did a lot of physical products that were clever for a bit. The thing though that was like, I felt like touched on something that felt deeply curious and had a life of its own was setting up Dialup, which was my app where you could talk to strangers.
Yes.
And the origin story came out of me making a lot of objects. I couldn't stare at computer screens, so I preferred voice. I preferred phone calls as communication because my eyes were tied, like crafting stuff all the time. And so I always preferred phone calls. I listened to a lot of podcasts. I would just like ask friends to talk to me. And I also wanted like a voice-based internet. I just couldn't keep up with checking things because my eyes were full. I like desired to be more online, but I couldn't. From there, like this sort of evolved into this app that connects strangers in random phone calls just to talk to each other, which was so delightful to play with once strangers started using it. It was cool to do it just with friends. You'd get a phone call at a random time, you'd pick up and it would be your friend and they didn't call you. You got called and you have to talk to each other.
Right. So it's not like you're logging on. No. You're like, oh, what room do I want to join? Your phone just blows up.
Your phone rings and you pick up and it's like at first it's just a friend. You're like, whoa, I didn't even think I'd be talking to you today. And then you talk and it's like, oh, that's cool. It's like running into someone. It feels magical. But it got wild once strangers started using it.
And at what frequency would people get these calls?
We only did it like twice a day. And you could choose your frequency. And then eventually we had topics and stuff. Because like at its peak, there was 90,000 people using it.
Wow. When did it start?
We started doing these experiments in 2018, like prior to pandemic and prior to Clubhouse existing.
Right.
And then in 2019, we like turned it into like this app that like you could use. And it was still small. It was like a few hundred people. It blew up during the pandemic. So because it was like, oh, people are missing out on talking to strangers. But it was so cool because even in the first week of the pandemic, I could get a surprise phone call and learn about what was happening in the world before it hit the news cycle because I would be talking to someone in Spain and they would tell me about something. And it's like I couldn't even find that information online because it didn't hit like American news yet. And it was so cool. You're just like transported to other parts of the world. And then, like, once it really blew up, we would get so many stories of people feeling like the person they connected to was, like, the perfect person to talk to for whatever they were going through in their life. It was just so much serendipity, and people would fly out to meet each other and stuff.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. There was romance, there was friendship. Like, it was so cool.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow.
It really had a life of its own where it had its own culture.
It reminds me of this concept of social sculpture, which maybe you've like come across in your travels before, but it's the Joseph Beuys, the German artist, coined this phrase, which can mean a lot of different things. I like to think of it as art that has some kind of impact on shaping society. And it very much broadens the definition of art.
Yeah.
Right. And this as an app, right? It is both an artwork, but it's also a computer program.
Yeah.
And it impacts society in the way that it like helps people or encourages people to rethink personal relationships.
Absolutely.
Bring serendipity.
Totally.
Create connection where there was no connection before.
It definitely it never became something like chat roulette. But
right. But it's pro-social in a way that chat programs or like visual programs are kind of antisocial.
Yeah.
Because it's about the voice connection.
Absolutely.
It's very intimate.
Yeah. I felt like the conversations got good after 15 to 20 minutes, that it takes time to figure out with any random person, what is the thing you're both connected on, like both curious about? Like it takes a lot of fishing, especially if you think you have nothing in common. There's usually something that you could eventually land on. And then from that moment on, the conversation's good.
Did Dialup have a business model?
Yeah, that was a difficult thing running it. There was a point where we did Dialup for organizations, so everyone at the same company or org could get randomly connected in phone calls. And like,
not a bad idea.
We had a few clients for that, but that wasn't as exciting. You can't pursue a business that you yourself like don't fully love, you know? I think that
Amen.
people just know, you know?
Amen.
Like
Yeah.
I could run it. Like I could pretend someone hired me to work there, but
And
it just wouldn't work, you know?
a lot of your artworks, we'll call them projects, have business models.
Yeah.
Naturally.
Yeah.
They are products or they are services. How do you define the success of your works?
I mean, I think of the success as how many people does it affect? But of course, you know, we can say like Dialup ran for 4 years and then it was not sustainable to run it. And we had to shut it down because it required constant maintenance, moderation, like lots of work, and could not figure out a clear business model and didn't want to do the other routes of like, oh, we're a startup. We'll fundraise and figure it out later. Just get a lot of users and compete with like Clubhouse got money. We can too. We just didn't go down that route. So
you have good foresight.
Yeah. So I think of it as like, okay, that piece, did it fail because it doesn't exist anymore? No, like it had its run and it had its time and it was like, you know, a poetic, beautiful thing that affected a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, sometimes I thought, well, that project failed because I'm not still doing it. It didn't evolve into anything. I couldn't figure out a business model. But then I have to remember like a lot of people's lives changed through it. So it's like, that was successful. Even when it was 100 people, it was successful because it affected all our lives. So it's, yeah.
Well, and it's really about how you define it.
Yeah.
Just because something is temporal or temporary doesn't make it unsuccessful. It's really about how you define success for the project.
There's so many factors. Also success for the team working on it. Like, was that a good experience for every, you know, all the engineers I collaborated with? Like, there's that aspect too.
Yes.
And so there's so many factors that go in. And actually, like, thinking more about what success means to me helps me figure out, like, the shape of projects.
Mm-hmm. In your work, this is a great example of a work. I think in your own words, you talk about how your own work often will impact social interaction between people and create more spontaneity.
Yeah.
Tell me about where that comes from in your work.
Oh, desiring, spontaneous conversations. I mean, I love surprising interactions. Like when I was doing pranksterish, I guess I still do pranksterish things. Like when I was hiring actors to do, you know, different things in public, I loved that reality was altered in such a way that all of the typical habits and thoughts that you have and the routines you go through life are disrupted, and you're forced to like really take in everything through the senses and talk to people around you. And it just feels like those moments are the most memorable and transformational in some way.
I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, novelty is one of the things that creates dopamine floods in our brain, right? And like, we live in such a routinized world, right? Especially if you're an office worker, people are glued to screens all day. And something that you're describing, which basically snaps you out of it and allows you to like leave the matrix for a second, is, I mean, we need more of that.
Totally. This is also like how I got into tarot too. I felt like by giving people tarot readings, it was like a moment where like they could think of themselves as different archetypes, and it takes people out of how they usually like process things and think about things. And I'm interested in other kinds of divination for that reason too.
Oh, excellent.
You know,
I can't wait to get into that.
Yeah.
Are there any other particular projects that you wanted to share or touch on and tell the story of?
Yeah, I mean, I ran a company called Branded Fruit for like a solid year, sort of like as I was starting out Dialup. And that one was a really good business. This was an accidental company. I mean, sometimes I think of things that I'm like, okay, that is a business and that's a product that people want. With this, I put a logo on an avocado and brought it to a friend's party because I thought it would be funny to her. I didn't think of the larger world. And I noticed so many people take a picture of an avocado with a logo on it that I thought,
the one that you brought.
Yeah, I made a few avocados with logos for her company and just brought them to her friend like a barbecue. Like it was not a corporate event. And so many people took pictures of this thing. So then I thought, oh, this is actually a cool swag item. And so I set up a domain and just like talked about it. And then Salesforce ended up ordering 500 avocados that said Salesforce. That was my first like real corporate client. Otherwise, I was just like, doing like a few at a time. After Salesforce ordered 500 avocados, I had to figure out, like I had to develop a relationship with a farm and figure out like how to do it at scale with other people. So I had to like build the assembly line.
With a farm?
I had to get the avocados.
Well, with a domestic farm or with an importer? Yeah.
A lot of the fruit I got was from California.
Cool.
It's good to be located here to do a fruit business. But yeah, I like found, 5 people, I think, to work on the Salesforce assembly line, and we churned them out. Also had to improve the process throughout because assembly lines are always like something you have to design while the people are there to figure out the flow and speed and what's bottlenecked and all that. But from that point on, then I just got the domain name brandedfruit.com and then expanded to oranges, pineapples. And I did like a bunch of examples and then got hired for a few other local tech companies. But it was still pretty low volume business. And then I read a Fast Company piece about the wastefulness of the swag industry and like just how much plastic is used for, like water bottles and stress balls and stuff like that, that people don't actually want those things. And so I emailed the journalist and I said, like, that's why people shouldn't just get avocados with their logo. And this intrigued her, so she wanted to interview me. And I hopped on a call with her. And then a month later, she wrote a piece with the headline that branded fruit was the hottest trend in swag in Silicon Valley. Which,
incredible.
Like, sure, it wasn't the hottest trend yet.
Right.
This piece, I think people look to, trends in Silicon Valley as like a trend that they should do elsewhere. So there were companies from all over the country reaching out, like so many random companies that wanted to place orders. I mean, I got 500 requests in a week.
Incredible.
Which I wouldn't think that Fast Company would lead to 500 requests, but people read headlines.
What do you think it is about the branded fruit that struck a chord?
It's okay. The price of it. It's actually, I charge between $3 and $5 per fruit, which for a swag item, that's right. That's in the budget range.
That's not even that much of a markup on an avocado,
It is if you get them from a farm.
Okay,
all right. I charged more, but like how much?
Well, you got to ship them,
Yeah, I charge for ship. I charge shipping separate too.
Good. Okay.
But it was like in the right budget range for most companies for swag. It's all eco-friendly. I mean, besides the shipping, the swag itself, it's fruit. There's no products being made. It's not going to go in landfill.
It's useful. It's positive, and it's unique.
It's that's the main thing. It has a long life on the internet more so than anything else because people don't take pictures of a stress ball. Like it just doesn't.
Gosh,
So I often think about like when you make a physical object, how does it live online if someone takes a video of it?
That is actually so interesting. Is it doesn't persist physically, like you eat it, but the photo will persist forever.
Absolutely. So I think that's like the appeal. It's like, oh, it's good marketing. And I think I thought it was quite weird at first to, put a logo on avocado. But once like a journalist says this is normal, then everyone does it. I think that's like it needed the article.
It's so funny how culture works, right?
Oh, yeah. Journalists have a lot of power in creating trends, more so than the creators of the thing itself. It's like the headline itself like creates a world in which people do that. And it becomes very normal. But yeah, that company was a delight to run because the assembly line was like so beautiful. I mean, we just talked and did, things with our hands. It was a lot of labor. I had to wake up at 4 a.m. to go to the produce market.
Oh, wow.
But it was like such a straightforward business where I had to do no additional problem solving once I figured it out. Like people order the oranges, we go get the fruit, we do the logo, we ship it out by 4 p.m. And it's like, it made money and it was great. The pandemic it didn't kill the business. Conferences stopped, so people didn't order fruit anymore. And then I had to shut down the factory. Then I switched what I was working on, and now people want fruit again.
Oh,
yeah. So
I bet they do.
Now I only do one business at a time. So I just tell everyone not now. Someone could purchase branded fruit from me.
Okay, well, you've heard it here first.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
Interesting. And you had another company that also really struck a chord.
A mask company?
Mask-alike.
Oh, yeah. That was also an example of a product that created really good videos. People loved the masks. They were masks that look like your own face.
At the very beginning of the pandemic?
Oh, I made it before there were any cases of COVID in the U.S. It was early February 2020. And people were wondering if they should wear masks at the airport or whatever.
Right.
Like, it wasn't even masking at the grocery store. It was like when people were like, maybe the virus is going to hit this country. Well, we wear masks. And I was sitting with some friends talking about masks. And a friend says, if you wear a mask, you won't be able to unlock your phone or something like that. But I made some joke like, what if your own face was printed on your mask? And then when I went home that night, I just made one because I just got excited. I thought that if I project an image on a Blender file, like a 3D file, that I could figure out how to print it warped so that when you sew it into the mask shape, it would line up perfectly. But when I made one and put it on the internet, I called it like the Face ID mask or something. It was a joke about being able to unlock your phone while wearing a mask. But it sort of struck a chord for people for many reasons. It was like pandemic was like peak zeitgeist. They looked really dystopian, and it brought up the question, like, what if someone steals your face and unlocks your phone? Is this good for security? And then I think, like, I got so many interviews from that, and it wasn't even a product. Like, I figured out how to make one. I have a fabric printer at home, so I could do one. I waited a while to actually sell them. I waited 8 months. I just thought the world doesn't need this right now.
No. Yeah. They needed like real masks.
Yo, totally. Yeah, it felt like such
possible.
a side thing.
Yeah.
So I ended up.
You read the room properly.
Yeah. I was like, it's not appropriate to launch like a joyful, fun pandemic project.
Yeah.
Totally.
And so you hinted at the fact that you had sunset a number of these projects and now you're working on a new project.
Yeah.
What is your current focus?
Yeah. So I sold my mask company. That was an interesting process.
Who bought it?
Someone who ran a custom printed packaging company. So like had familiarity with print on demand.
Have you talked to them about branded fruit?
They sold their company. No, we're both doing different stuff.
It's a roll up. Okay, got it. Yeah, the ship has sailed.
Anyway, after I sold my mask company, it was wonderful because I could actually, for a few months, really figure out what I wanted to do next. I, at the time, still was working on Dialup, my voice chat app. And I was figuring out what to do with like voice technology and connecting people. And the thing I kept turning to was people are using Dialup to give each other tarot readings. There was all these categories that we ended up adding once it reached thousands of people, just so there was some common interest. And there was like cooking, there was music, there was film, there was tarot. The tarot topic had like 1,200 people in it. And there were professional tarot readers on there. There were people that were just hobbyists. Like tarot is a hot trend. I love this topic. Could I build like an interface for having a shared deck that you could shuffle together? I also interviewed a lot of tarot people and realized how much technology was missing for tarot readers running their online practice. Like a way to, for people to book sessions with them, a way to actually do the session where the client could pick the cards that, Zoom didn't work well because you can't shuffle together on Zoom and you can't see the art. They have to like hold up each card to the camera and it's all blurry.
Yeah.
And so much of tarot is looking at the art. And what's really cool about Moonlight, this is the tarot app I ended up making, is you can also read about the cards and read like the artist statement from each illustration, even if you're a client. So there's just full transparency into how tarot works and it's less mysterious, which I thought was really important for a good reading. And so a lot of tarot professionals really wanted to use this software. And then I found that people who weren't into tarot at all also wanted to use the software because they could just pull cards for themselves and it like helped them learn tarot. So
cool.
It took time to actually, become serious and decide to turn this into a company. Also needed more data and on the market and what the business model would be. But then felt very clear, like, oh, this is a product that should exist. There's just so many things to build within that space. So I decided to just do that full time.
Fantastic. Yeah. So let's talk about your creative process. Where have you noticed that your best creative ideas come from? And how do you create the conditions for creativity?
So I think the best ideas come from random tangents during conversations. I often think of ideas while I am talking to someone. These sorts of random what-if scenarios fly up all the time in conversations. It's the ones that I keep thinking about later. That it's like, okay, yeah, all these ideas come up. Or if I notice that the conversation has suddenly switched to everyone talking about that thing. It's like, oh, if this is interesting, there's something there. I also am strict on, like, I get a lot of ideas and I don't write any of them down. I let a lot of them just fly away and whatever sticks is the one. I don't make a spreadsheet of all the ideas I should do and then return to the spreadsheet and try to diligently do all my projects. It's like only the ones that get stored end up out there.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's so very organic for you.
Yeah.
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 Very intuitive, actually.
It's intuitive. There's also like a deep I think sometimes, even if the project seems good, cool, useful, sometimes the thing just doesn't excite me. And then I'm like, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
Sometimes ideas make me feel like tired even thinking about it. It's like, that seems like a big project to do. And yes, people will like it, but why do I feel so tired just thinking about it? I end up not doing it. And I do the things that's like, okay, this feels like it brings me full of life. And so I'll do that. So it is kind of intuitive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you self-identify as an artist?
I think so, because that's how people refer to me.
Well, I ask, one of the reasons I ask, because I think artists do follow their bliss, and they do espouse this idea that they deserve to follow what is interesting to them versus what is going to get an audience's attention or an audience's resource or serve
what do you
the
call
audience.
Someone who cares about the audience, a creator.
Well, so I like to say that on one side you have artists, on the other side you have a hack.
Yeah. Whoa, hack. Yeah.
And then in the middle you have a craftsman.
Okay. Yeah.
And there's there's a gradient between, and I'm not asking you to place yourself.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I'm noticing is these artistic tendencies of saying, this energizes me. Like, I want to build this.
I can't follow my whim all the time. I don't follow my whim all the time. For sure.
Well, especially because so many of these are businesses that you're running.
And the day-to-day is not always exciting, for sure.
Right.
It's like, if the big idea and the mission behind the thing continues to excite me, then the details themselves may be boring and not like I'm following my joy, like doing all the details.
Yes.
Like, I'm actually very results oriented, and I actually like don't like a lot of process stuff.
I feel like you also don't really fit on that polarity like neatly. I think there's another probably Z-axis that would have to be invented.
Yeah.
What are some of your biggest creative inspirations?
Oh, that's a really good question. It kind of changes every year. I think years ago I was very interested in podcasts too. I felt very interested in,
what were some of your favorites?
I was like I don't listen to this anymore, but even in 2004 I was listening to like This American Life and just like hearing random stories about people.
I love This American Life.
This is so cool. Like just interviews, hearing a soundscape of voices. That's so cool. I didn't have a creative project in response to it, but that's just like something that stuck with me. I think now I'm actually deeply inspired by random TikTok videos of like interviews with people on the street. Like, I just love seeing strangers all over the world and what they're up to.
Yeah.
And also I love like understanding subcultures. That is very interesting to me.
Tell me about some subcultures that you find interesting.
On TikTok
or anywhere. Yeah. Whatever
there's weird stuff. I mean, there's like teenagers getting into like dream realities where they just like daydream about stuff to like manifest it. And it's like they have their own language and keywords for it. And they're like mirroring each other. I mean, it's weird, but it's like, whoa, that's
cool.
A thing they all got into because of the algorithm. I also I do bird calls on TikTok. Like, that is my account, is doing imitations of crows. And through that, I found like different types of singing that involve like making sounds more so than like singing.
Yes.
And just got into like throat singing TikTok and stuff. So
wow,
that's just interesting to me. And they're all learning from each other.
Could you give us a few crow calls? That's good.
I could do a range of emotions and yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
I started with pigeon. And then expanded to crow. I realized I could do crow a few years ago.
Oh wow, that's fantastic. Any other birds?
No,
pigeons and crows.
Maybe I could work on it.
Yeah,
so I just stuck with that.
Yeah,
and then like on TikTok too, there's like specialists in other birds. There's like Seagull Girl and stuff. Because like once I made a video,
I have seen Seagull Girl.
You've seen Seagull? Okay, yeah.
On TikTok,
great.
Yeah. It's like a seagull imitation championship somewhere.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
I would do like a crow competition.
Yeah, we gotta get you in there.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm interested in how like weird hobbies can surface on the internet. That's always inspiring for me.
Can you share a professional failure? What about in partnerships? Because you have done a lot on
collaborations.
Yeah, collaborations on your own, but you've also chosen partners. Any lessons from that?
I think for lots of projects, your collaborator might not be your forever collaborator. There might be a point where you want to do different things with your life, and that's totally fine, and not to like look at it in any sort of bitter way.
So setting up expectations about like that this is going to be project that runs, and it may run indefinitely, but we also want to be in touch about off-ramps as well in a healthy way.
But that's hard to do. I mean, it's like, if you're in a relationship, you don't like discuss how you want to break up one day. You know?
Right.
So it's like, I think something important for any collaboration is that you have like a shared mission. I care so much about like having some like umbrella idea that everything fits under. And if you're both on board with that, then a lot of things sort themselves out. But it's hard to find the people that care about the mission as much. So I think it's very important to be like very selective about who you want to work with on like the big ideas.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I think that mission alignment is so crucial.
Yeah.
And then not to be so picky or didactic about the details.
Yeah.
But if two people are motivated by the same big picture mission, then magic can really happen.
Totally. But it might not, you might not have the shared mission forever, and that's okay. I actually worked alone for a long time before working with other people. I think when I first started working with people was when I was running a bunch of different assembly lines. And I thought, wow, it's so cool. So cool how when you work with a new person, they bring something else to it and then it evolves. And it's like, okay, you could be select about who you bring in, but realize the shape of things change with the people.
Absolutely.
And this is why, startups that grow feel different every time it goes to a new company size. It's like the company is just different. The culture, the way things are done, just like everything shifts. But that's such a cool opportunity to like, become this like new form.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I feel like you're particularly in touch with these social organisms, like that are closed within a company, but also ones that are very open and connected through the various apps and projects you've created.
Yeah,
You're very sensitive to that.
Yeah. I also think like it's tricky to get right. I mean, I'm not at the point where I'm hiring a ton of people for, Moonlight. But, inevitably as a company grows, you need to. But you're not going to always, get the makeup of the team correct, nor do you know what direction it'll go in. I think that's like an ongoing learning thing.
Yeah.
That's like a scary thing for, founders to have to kind of always think about the makeup of their team and if it's the right one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's everything.
Yeah.
How have you noticed social perception of technology change over the course of your
that's
your
interesting.
Work?
Yeah. The biggest thing for me is like, I was playing with AI art when it was cool and non-controversial at all.
Oh, when was that?
I was doing stuff with AI art in 2017 when it was
generative
niche.
AI or okay.
Yeah, well, it was GANs and like latent space, and it was like using like the all of the ImageNet categorization stuff, and then like fusing mashups together so you could have a dog that looks like a flower. And there was no discourse on will this replace artists. There was no like question about if it was stolen because the model was actually like quite boring. It wasn't like scraped from DeviantArt and stuff. It was like just like all like public domain stuff. But now it's so laced with like, now that it's good, it is it's like there's so many ethical questions there.
Yes.
Where it's like now I don't even want to touch AI.
That's so
like
interesting. So you're saying that when it was almost in this primordial ooze phase, that it wasn't really good. It wasn't scary good.
It wasn't coming for anyone's job.
Right.
I think humans will always be afraid of things coming for their job, and inevitably things do come for your job. But it's complicated.
It's extremely complicated. Yeah.
I don't want to totally say no AI.
Right.
Yeah.
No, but it requires a lot of first principles thinking and may require some of that kind of like defense, depending on how it gets implemented.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very interesting. Okay. Why don't we do a tarot reading?
Let's do it.
Hello, listeners. At this point in the show, Danielle and I do a tarot reading. If you happen to find that boring, you can skip ahead until there's 3 minutes left in the show to hear Danielle's Japanese onigiri recipe. All right, on with the tarot.
So this is I've never had a tarot reading before.
Yes.
This is my first
I do a lot
interaction
of
with
readings. For some context, I've been doing tarot for like 15 years, and something interesting, like Moonlight, the platform I work on, there's like professionals on it that you could book with, but everyone has certain philosophies around tarot. I guess I've become more witchy over the years.
Mm-hmm.
I use it for like understanding things and exploring possibilities.
Sure.
I think everyone has their own style. That's what's cool about tarot. And on Moonlight, we have a variety of professionals that all have different philosophies. Some are very much like, we're, looking at the pictures and talking about it, but some are like, my grandparents are psychic and I was trained. I've been doing tarot my whole life. And so it's like, there's all different kinds of people.
Yeah.
I come to it from like, I have been doing it for 15 years. I started out just doing it for my roommates. I thought it was a cool conversational tool, and then ended up doing it for tons of strangers. And then, now I run a tarot platform, so I do tarot every day. But that's just some context. But, normally if we were online, I would use my platform. But since we're in person, I'm into both digital and physical. So we will use my decks.
Excellent. So tell me about these decks.
So I actually have a deck collection. This one's from Colombia and this one's from Japan. I like to collect decks from other countries. Tarot's like exploded where just tons of artists are making decks. And they're all very different. Some are 22 cards and some are 78 cards.
Okay.
These are both
Where did
smaller
tarot originate?
decks. Oh, that's debatable. I mean, you ask tarot readers that, you're going to get tons of different answers. But it was originally like in the 1400s.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's do this. This is great. Do we need more space on the table?
No.
Okay, great.
So I will actually let you choose the deck. I'll tell you a little bit about each deck.
Oh wow, yeah, these are gorgeous.
Yeah, I love finding decks that are like non-traditional. Either one that you're gravitating towards. We could also mix two of them.
Ooh, let's roll with the Colombian one. I think that one's gorgeous.
This is like majors. Okay, so we'll use this one. Let's do like a 3-card spread for you.
Lovely.
But first, is there some question that's just been like looming on your mind?
Yes.
What?
Oh, I have to share it publicly?
You can be vague if you want. It's more helpful to know what the question is.
Well, then I'll lower the stakes a little bit.
Okay, yeah.
We're determining whether or not to move.
Oh, wow. Okay. From where to where?
From one part of LA to another part of LA.
Okay, so like moving your home.
Yeah.
What questions do you have about the move?
Well, we're considering moving to a place that's more convenient for our kids' school.
Yeah.
Which is further from the ocean.
Okay.
And it's further from what I would call like cultural centers.
Okay.
So in some ways it's like, it's almost like, do we move to the suburbs or not?
Yeah.
And I think my identity is wrapped up in not being someone who moves to the suburbs.
Yeah.
At the same time, I would still have proximity to nature and potentially more focus on family and an opportunity to recreate community. So it's not social suicide as much as it is a change of my own identity and a deeper commitment to family.
So I think the questions I would want to do it for is, how would it affect your family? How would it affect like your persona, like your day-to-day? Like what's your new day-to-day life like?
Yeah.
And then how does it affect like your ideas and creativity and sort of like what you create once you're there? Do those 3 things make sense?
They absolutely do.
Okay, so I want you to close your eyes actually as I shuffle. And I want you to zoom out as though you're seeing yourself like in a video game, like you're like a character in a video game, and you are home in your current place you live. I want you to create all these cutscenes of like your day, like who are you talking to, what's in your environment, what are conversations like with your family, when you walk out your door, what do you see? Just let images float to mind. You don't need to tell me any of them.
It's a lovely visualization.
Now I want you to fast forward 5 years and you're still there. What is your day-to-day like? What has the environment changed? What kinds of conversations are you having? Who are the other people in your home? And also, what do you see when you go out the door and walk around your neighborhood?
I'm visualizing.
Now we're going to jump to a new place. There's this place that you're thinking of moving to. You're there. You are looking at your room. You're looking at your kitchen. You are walking out the door. What do you see? Let images float to mind. Your kid walks in the door. What are they talking about? Let anything float to mind. You're driving around because I assume you can't walk everywhere. What do you see when you look out the window? Okay, whenever you're ready and the images get blurry and you're out of images, tell me to stop shuffling.
Stop.
Okay, great. Okay, you can open your eyes. So we're going to spread these out, and I want you to pick the card that represents staying.
Oh. Staying.
Pick the card that represents leaving. Let's do these first and then gradually add more cards. I like to do like slow reveal.
Yeah. So
Okay.
this is staying.
Oh, justice. That's interesting. And you got the moon for leaving.
Oh.
This is cool. This is actually like justice is like the fair. It's like weighing the options and doing what's most fair and most like right, which is interesting because you kind of said the opposite in a way. You're like, oh, moving will be the right decision for, my kid and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
But it's actually in your position of staying, you would figure out how to make all those things you're seeking fine in the current place you're in.
Mm.
Doing what is most aligned and like working hard on making all of it work and juggling things so that it works in your current location. What is interesting in the should you move or like in this new place is this is more mysterious and alien. It's like otherworldly on your day-to-day. There's like a lot of things, and it's maybe like a cultural difference too.
Well,
It's like
the unknown.
it's the unknown, but there's so much new stimulus and new culture and new ways of being in that place that is unfamiliar territory, but still exciting.
You're
Like,
making it sound attractive.
sure.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see what the full reading
Yeah.
is.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to jump to conclusions here.
But it's also something else that's interesting about the moon. It's very fantasy. It's very like things that don't have tangible evidence. So there's a mysteriousness to you that is you have all these theories about how will it go, but
Mhm.
don't have concrete evidence of the things.
Mm.
It is very much speculation. But I would say on a day-to-day basis, I still view, if this is your persona just in the day-to-day, I view this as you're on a new planet and you're figuring out how you're supposed to like be. Like, how do you interact with your neighbors? What is normal there? You're entering a zone that has already been established.
Interesting.
And so there's more of a everything is new. Whereas this, it's like, okay, everything's familiar. Things I can like, I've done all my learning on my current place, and I can make things happen. Like I know about how to communicate with my neighbors and know about how things operate, and you can kind of like get
Manage
shit
the
done.
situation.
You can manage
Yeah.
situations and get shit done no matter like what comes your way because you already know all of your resources. Whereas this, it's like new land. So let's do the how will this affect your family?
Okay.
So I want you to pull a card for staying. Yeah. And now pick a card for leaving. Great. Okay. Oh, you got the Empress.
Oh.
And you got the Magician. That's really interesting. Okay. With this one, with staying with family, there's like a deep sense of like comfort. There's still like things are familiar and things can like flourish. This is like sort of a card about like planting things in your garden.
The Empress.
Yes.
Mm.
And then like seeing the garden come to fruition. And this also relates to the kind of control and like mastery over environment with justice. I'll come back to it though. Magician is there's like beginner's luck and a desire to dazzle and create spectacles in some way. And I think this is kind of interesting paired with the moon because it's like your family is learning how to be in this new environment and excited about doing things in a new way. But it's all new. They're new to it. Like there's like learning. There's some learning curve about how to be in this new place. And even if it's like the layout of your home and stuff, this is like it's like the first card in the major arcana, which it's like, there's a whole journey you could do with the tarot cards of like from the Fool is 0 and it goes all the way to the worlds. And it's like a journey, and magicians, I don't know if like assimilate into the culture of that new place is the right way to put it, but it's like a lot of effort to learn the ways of the new place.
Gotcha.
Or how to
A
be.
beginner's mindset.
Yeah, it's
wrapped
beginner.
up to make it
Yeah,
magician.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Whereas this is like you've already planted seeds and like,
Very consistent.
yeah. Okay, we'll do the third card and then we'll do like an overview of the thing. So the third card's about you and about like what sort of output is from you, like what is happening to your creativity in these environments. So pull a card for the staying in current place. Okay. And then pull a card for moving. Okay. What's got the Hierophant.
What was that?
The Hierophant.
Hierophant.
The Hierophant, yeah. The judge. It's actually, there's a lot of similarities between Justice and Hierophant because they're both like authority. Oh, you got the Fool. That's just, you got the zero card. Okay, for how this will affect your like output and creativity, a Hierophant is a figure that people come to for advice. Like, there's
sage.
Yeah, they're sage. They have an authority on things and people respect them. And they also like have like a lot of knowledge and sort of understanding of traditions and things. And in your current place, even paired with all this, like the Empress, like they're sowing the seeds from their garden. You got Justice, which like understands how to balance all their resources to make things happen. You also have in your creativity, you have a lot of space to be a resource for people because you're not figuring out all this stuff right now.
That is how I feel in my current spot.
Right. You're not in a new environment needing to learn those things. So you actually do have a lot of capacity. You have a lot of stability.
Yes.
This one's so interesting for you. The Fool is like leaping into a new beginning. In a lot of tarot decks, it shows someone walking towards a cliff or like walking on the edge of a cliff.
Yes.
And they're like reaching, and they might fall over the edge, but they're like, whatever, I'm having a
Happy go lucky.
It's very happy go lucky, which is funny paired with the Magician too, which is also like,
has fun.
I'm on a stage and I'm supposed to dazzle people and I don't know how, but I'm going to pretend I have all my things together.
Right.
These are such different energies. Like in this one, you're taken out of sorts. You're taken away from the things that are like very stable for you.
Mm-hmm.
All these kinds of new things to figure out. And this one is very much like you already have all the things stable in your life and you're there and support and resource and rock. But in here, you're learning a lot of things, jumping onto things, and you're kind of off on your own adventure in many ways, which is also exciting.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a lot of learning and changing for you versus being, in some ways, stuck in a more stable role.
Yeah. Well, there's the devil you know and the devil you don't, and I've always been more inclined to the devil you don't.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's the Fool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Wow. Lovely. Thank you.
Yeah. Is there anything that like jumps out to you? I like to ask this.
Well, are you familiar with that hero's journey?
Yeah. This is how a lot of people talk about like the 22 major arcana is like the hero's journey beginning with the Fool.
My life has been like, I have been the hero, and I have in my last few years been the guide and the coach, right, who has helped other heroes.
Yeah.
And I'm, as part of where I am in my life and as part of where I'm determining in this move, I'm considering becoming a hero again.
Yeah.
And I've spent some time coaching and being the guide.
Yeah.
And so I am attracted to the idea of the symbolism of diving back into another hero's journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's another...
Right, this is starting over.
There's another guy rolling on the side of that, right? And you're starting over on like a new journey, but with all the strength and experience that you've had. I've never felt more sure that I need to take the lead.
It's often the case, though, when someone's asking a should I question for a tarot reader, that they might have already made the decision before they're asking.
Well, and through the conversation, you may be unlocking a decision that someone's made that they might not even have moved into their conscious mind.
Yeah, that's true.
It could be in my unconscious, but you're by talking about it, where I'm now pulling it in my conscious mind, I'm kind of like verbalizing what I already emotionally feel.
Right, but then that sets you on a path to like doing it with greater speed because you are more aligned with like, oh yeah, this is what I'm supposed to do.
That's exactly right. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah. Well, let's move into another final section.
So we ask everyone for one recipe.
Okay.
So could you take me through what have you been cooking recently and in great detail? Please share.
Recently this month, I have been making onigiri, which is a popular rice ball snack in Japan that you can find at convenience stores. So I make salty salmon, though I also made a jalapeno one, which is like my San Francisco version of onigiri.
Oh, fantastic.
But the salmon one, I take salmon and I cover it with salt and then I let it sit in the fridge for like a day just so like the salt soaks into the salmon. Then the next day I make sushi rice, sticky rice. Then I cook the salmon And when I cook it, I add a bunch of things that I guess is not traditional. I put garlic on it. I put a dash of smoked paprika for a subtle smokiness. I cook it so it's like crispy. I also put the sesame oil so it gets like some like fried bits in it. And then I sometimes make it even spicier depending on how I'm feeling. So I'll add like just chili flakes. So it has like...
You have a lot going on in the filling.
Yeah, it's more than like 7-Eleven. I think it's like just salty salmon.
Yeah.
But I do have a lot going on in the filling. Then I make it. I actually construct the onigiri with this stainless steel press. So I like make all the rice balls and then let them cool. And then I like put them on these seaweed wrappers that come in a plastic wrap that I get from Korea.
I would expect nothing less from someone who has designed artisanal assembly lines before. That's wisdom. So finally,
corporate 7-Eleven should just make better snacks.
Yeah.
It is. The snack options in this country are dire.
Well, Danielle, I've had an amazing time sharing space with you, and thank you so much for all your time.
Of course, you asked me great questions.
Where can people follow you and find your work?
DanielleBaskin.com, just my name.com, has links to all my stuff. Like it has links to Moonlight, has links to my Twitter, mailing list, all that stuff. And if you're interested in tarot, even if you're totally new to it, or like are curious about getting a tarot reading, you can go to moonlight.world. All the professionals on our platform are really incredible. And you get to use this cool interactive software that we spent the last year building. So you should check it out.
I can't wait. Well, after today, I'm hooked on tarot.
Awesome.
I'm going to be using it. All right. Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you for tuning into At Large. Today's episode was produced by Sickbird Productions. Our theme song is Son of Sanford by Motion Worker. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and by email at atlargeshow.com. Follow me at SWH Norton on Instagram and Twitter, and DM me about the guests you want to hear on the show.